I call Dr. Megan Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think it was quite telling that at question time today, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister informed the Leader of the Opposition that he was getting tired of being asked to be straight up. That our Prime Minister doesn't want to be reminded to be straight with the New Zealand public, I think is a bit of a theme of how this year is going to run. We have a Prime Minister that is slippery, we have a government that is arrogant, and we have a government that is out of touch. I think nowhere was this divide between the government and the opposition born more sharply in the two State of the Nation speeches that we saw from John Key and from the Labour leader Andrew Little. Labour stands for jobs. Labour wants to create jobs and National wants to flog off our state houses. That's where the divide is drawn and that's where we've put the gauntlet down. Labour believes that we can do better as a country and National is labouring under the mistaken belief that you can create more houses by reducing the number. I'm interested to see the arithmetic. I think that it's quite obvious that Nick Smith showed what 20 plus 20 equaling 44 was his 48. Sorry, Mrs. King. That was his answer in question time today as an interjection across the House. And it's this kind of arithmetic that is lying at the heart of the Housing Minister's changes to our housing stock. A man that cannot add 20 plus 20. So we will be watching this with great interest as we go through. Because National state housing sell-off is a mess and it does carry a huge risk that they won't build a single new house. National is failing New Zealand families when it comes to housing. But Labour has a plan. Labour is raring to go. We started this 51st Parliament holding this government to account on its arrogance, on its inability to tell the truth and the way it conducted itself. And we will not resile from that. It is our job to hold this ailing government that is suffering from a severe bout of third termitis to account and to tell them that time's up and New Zealanders want to change. When the current government came to office, there were fewer than 100,000 unemployed New Zealanders. There are now 46,000 more New Zealanders unemployed compared to when this government takes office. Simply putting in your speech notes and chanting over and over again that you're about jobs and growth isn't enough. You need to show the evidence and you need to show New Zealanders that you're about well-paid, sustainable... Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I know you do. The government needs to show New Zealanders that they are about creating jobs and well-paid jobs that are fit for the 21st century. In the last quarter alone, the number of out-of-work Kiwis grew by 8,000. And that is simply not enough. This needs to be turned around. And this will be a priority for a Labour government in 2017. When Labour maintained unemployment at 4% or lower for 4 years from 2004 through to 2008, we had the lowest unemployment figures in the OECD, and today we've fallen to 10th. This is not good enough for us. This is something that we want to turn around. This is a government that is not doing its job. It is a government that has let standards fall so far, and it is showing that it is absolutely not up to the task. And then we have the great story of the deal of the century from the government, from the master negotiators of John Key and Stephen Joyce, who went in to get a deal for New Zealanders. The same deal makers who brought you buying Nova Pay when you couldn't fix it. The same deal makers that ended up with a pretty bum deal down south. The same deal makers that everything they touch turns to custard. So what do we have? We have a free convention centre that is no longer free. But we're told it is still a good deal for New Zealanders. But the stitch-up is unravelling. It was a shoddy deal whereby John Key and Stephen Boyce stitched up the deal on the quiet without any proper competitive bidding. And this was always going to come back to bite them. But what we had, there was the free convention centre that we were offered. All we had to do, and it wasn't much to ask, was sell off our gambling laws. Those pesky laws that would control how it is that we could regulate gambling in our country. That's all we had to do, and hey presto would have a free convention centre. Well, that's going to cost the New Zealand taxpayer $130 million out of their pocket, as well as a downgrading of their gambling laws. What kind of deal is this? What we have is corporate welfare going on from the people who promised to make sure that taxpayer money was well guarded. But what we're also having is a lot of protesting from the national backbench in particular. I would think about what unity there is in the National Caucus. We had what sounded like a spill speech yesterday from Jonathan Young. I think he's getting excited about the prospect of leaders from New Plymouth and thinking that he might have a crack, because we're hearing that they're all united, they're all standing together. I think they're worried that a bit of appetitis might spread over the Tasman and that maybe everything is coming undone. And we saw that today. At the Finance and Expenditure Committee, Bill English running a million miles from the Sky City deal, not wanting to have anything about it. And as my colleague Grant Robinson said, that the Southern man wanted to show that he could put together a much better deal than the wide boys negotiators from Auckland. But 2015, Mr Speaker, is panning out to be a bit of a year of the musical in this House. We've had constant mentioning about Winston Peters' Little River Band refrain to Nelson that help is on the way yesterday. But what have we had from the National Party? Well, we've had Bill English telling us that he wanted to walk away. He wanted to walk away from the deal. The Southern man, or the Kenny Rogers of the National Party, knew when to fold him. He knew when to walk away. But what I implore Bill English is to come over here to a different kind of tune. Because under Andrew Little, we're singing a very different song than the wide boy negotiators of Stephen Joyce and John Key. While there might be shonky deals and massaging of the truth, to put it nicely, over here with Andrew Little, it's all straight talking, three chords and the truth. That's the kind of music that we're making over here, and that is what we will continue to have. We have a government that has no answers. We have the Great State House sell-off as one solution that's being put up to housing, but then we do have another solution from Housing Minister, one of the holy trinity of housing ministers as I've been described today, from Nick Smith, and that's when all else fails, say you're going to change the Resource Management Act. Get some numbers, say that's the only thing holding up housing, and change the Resource Management Act. Well, Mr Speaker, what we have to be very aware of is Trojan horses creeping in when we're not going to see this as a solution to our housing problem. What we have, that's right, Dr Clark, it's not a musical. It's not a musical at all. A pantomime played out from Dr Nick Smith. That what we are going to see, watch out, what we are seeing is some numbers that have been made up, some numbers that have been made up and are not going to decrease the cost of housing in this country at all. Mr Speaker, this is an arrogant and out-of-touch government that does not have the answers that we need. We've got a government whose only solution is to sell off state houses. The opposition are telling us that we're obsessed with who owns the houses. Well, I'd say their ideologically driven agenda about selling off state houses to property developers in the private sector is about an ideologically directed agenda when it comes to housing. So let's see some straight talking and get back to three chords and the truth as we are over here.
The Honourable Paul